thanks for coming on, Hector. As I said just then, I've had a few people request to get you on, and yeah, I'm really interested in the narrative you guys are trying to portray with your course, and trying to do something a bit different to the narrative that's currently put out by the other, classic university degrees, industrial design. And yeah, maybe just to start off, just introduce yourself and go over your background and maybe a brief history of how you've led up to this point.
Sure, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So super excited. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm an industrial designer by training. I went to school here in the States, and after I graduated with my undergraduate degree, I went into working in housewares and toy designs, and was doing that for quite some time until I just felt like I needed to do something else. I got really exhausted and just didn't want to do the same thing over and over again. And so with influence from family and siblings and some friends, um, I went into education, and I thought that was a really good shift into just a new schedule, new routine. So I went back to grad school to get my master's degree, so that I can teach at a academic level, at a university level. And things got started in 2015. I started teaching here in Chicago. That's where I'm at right now. And I was you know, the young, energetic, educator who wanted to come in and do a bunch of stuff, wanted to change the world. I wanted to go in and was very excited to be around students, and I think a lot of that excitement came because my experience as a student wasn't that great. And so
Mm,
I felt like I needed to go in and just redeem myself.
yeah.
And just like, man, if now I'm sitting on this side of the table, things need to be different. I want to give the students a whole different experience. I want to be there for them. I want to be accessible for them. And so essentially my frustrations as a student turned into innovations as an educator.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, that's like with anything, I suppose, industrial design, like a problem creates a solution. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, all that energy, all of that excitement, I ended up uh, founding Advanced Design, which is the nonprofit organization. Um, and that started in 2016. And I had reached out to students at the school that I was teaching at, students that had that ambition, that sparkle in the corner of their eyes. I was like, I know which students are go-getters, and I
Mm.
know which students are natural leaders. And so I specifically reached out to about five or six of them. I'm like, hey, I'm starting this new thing. I know you're a student, but this is going to be amazing, and it's going to change things for you. And yeah, and so those students graduated eventually, and have been part of the organization since 2016. They're now working professionals, and they went from being students to my colleagues to my friends. So really
Mm.
excited. And that was like 7 or so years ago. Um, and then during COVID, so 2020, everything shifted in March of 2020. you know, uh, the world came to a halt. Everyone started just working from home. And I had just finished working at a I had just finished working at a university here locally called University of Notre Dame. And my contract had expired, and for the first time in a really long time, I was like unemployed. I had nothing going on.
Mm.
And I thought I was going to be scared and anxious, like, oh man, I don't have a job. But I think COVID, because the whole world kind of stopped, I was like, okay, I think it's okay. Like, I think I'll be fine because there's bigger things happening than me not having a job. And I was just kind of very chill like about it. I was like, usually, if it was right now, if I would have lost my job right now, I would have been very, very anxious. Um, but I think it was because it was COVID was new and all the, it was just like insane stuff going on. I was like, yeah, I think it's fine. And that summer, I took a trip to Salt Lake City, which is a city here in the States. I drove, it was like a 15-hour drive. And I went to go visit my friend Spencer Nugent. Um, Spencer is amazing industrial designer and is known for just sketching and just amazing dude. And I went to go visit him. He invited me to come over, and I went with my partner, and we drove 15 hours straight. And that drive takes you through a variety of different landscapes.
Mm,
You're driving through flatlands, you're driving through mountains, you're driving, you see a little bit of everything. And on my way there, the 15 hours there, it had me thinking. Like I was driving when my partner would be sleeping, etc. And now you were just like driving, looking at the road. My mind was like racing. I
mm,
was just thinking of everything. Like so many things were happening in my head. And I got to Spencer's house, and we were there for about 2 weeks. Um, but then I told Spencer, "Hey man, we should start a school. We should, you know, we should do this. We should do that." Like I just started going off, and it was just like all that driving. And Spencer probably looked at me, was like, you're crazy." But I think once we got all the ambitious ideas out the way and made it a little more practical, we were like, yeah, we can definitely do this. Especially during that time, COVID had really normalized the whole hybrid working from home,
mm,
all these, Zoom and all these like video chats started to become better and just a lot more part of our lives, like just normal.
mm,
So we were like, I think we can totally do this. We can totally pull it off. I don't think we need to be in person, especially since, you know, COVID was happening. I think we can do this all online and it can be global. So that means that we can offer even more accessibility. We don't have to worry about students dealing with visa and all the financial aspects that come with moving. You can just learn from the comfort of your home.
mm,
And that's when Offsite was born. Offsite is our online experimental design school. And we launched it about 2 months after that trip. I got back to Chicago and we just worked for like 2 months, probably every day, trying to strategize, trying to put the visual brand language together for the team. The design team was putting all the marketing stuff together and the website and everything. So for about 2.5 months, we just worked,
mm,
and then we announced it. We announced it the first week of August of 2020, and then we launched it in September as a pilot program because we knew that we didn't know what we were doing. We knew that it was definitely an experiment.
mm.
It was a beta, version, and we are like, we need to test this prototype out, and that's what happened. And it's been 3 years, so that's kind of a really long, short intro
It's
for
interesting. Like, I
everything that
feel
I've
like
been.
your story is really inspiring because, like, even myself, I've been in a lot of situations recently where I've kind of procrastinated over ideas and like actually just making the leap. Like, even in podcasts, I was thinking of doing podcasts for like years, all through uni. And it was only when I finished uni and I actually had time and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I need to, fill my time with something while I'm in that job search. And then, yeah, the podcast happened. But I feel like just taking that leap is sometimes what a lot of people need to hear. Like, you got that crazy idea, just make it happen. Like, what's stopping you, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really scary. I mean, your ideas can be amazing, but I think when they live inside you
Mm.
by themselves, that's when the inaction happens. I think the action happens when you start sharing it with a really close group of people that support you, that believe in you. That's when the action happens, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, they reaffirm the ideas you have that they aren't just crazy ideas and they're actually plausible. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Or they're like, hey, let me do this with you because
Yeah.
looks like it's going to be awesome. So you got to get a really good group of friends and visionaries that are going to be there with you.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe if you could just start off, just you've already breezed over it a little bit, but just maybe just discuss what Offsite is and yeah, what you offer through the program. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Offsite, like I mentioned, Offsite is it's an experimental design school. We offer 12-week curriculums. So very similar to, like, let's say it's a very boot camp style. So for
Mm,
12 weeks, you come to us and we provide you with different courses that are going to help you accelerate your skill sets, accelerate your knowledge of industrial design. And so we have two pathways. One pathway is an introduction to industrial design, and we call that cohort number one, breaking into design. And that pathway, um, we get a lot of people that are not designers, that didn't go to school for design, but know about industrial design either through work or, through life and culture. They see, I think industrial design is becoming very common, very popular,
mm,
especially with a lot of companies, um, like Apple and Microsoft
mm,
and all these other companies that really value design. So a lot of people are starting to learn about what is industrial design. And so we get a lot of engineers, a lot of people in business, people in communications, marketing, you name it. They're interested. They're like, whoa, this is really cool. I wish I knew this existed when I was at school.
mm,
And so they come to us and I have a conversation with them. I get to know them. I get to know their circumstance so that we can understand how to best help them. And so we usually have them take the first cohort, and it's a very foundation style type of cohort where we teach them very, intro level courses like sketching. We teach them about different methods of what, like design thinking, things like that. We also um, have other courses that will allow them to think about what is design. So we offer a course called Design Discourse, where they have conversations about what is design, what is good design, where do I fit in this picture? And so
mm,
having them think about just, having them have this dialogue about design, so they can kind of articulate and kind of understand what is industrial design and what they're getting themselves into.
mm,
So that's the first pathway. And then the second pathway is for anyone that has already a design education in industrial design. You can be um, a current student, you could be a freshman, you can be a first, second, third year student, you can be a recent graduate. You could have 10 years of experience and still come back and be like, I
mm,
need to know more because
mm,
perhaps you're in management and you are now managing people and maybe you've kind of no longer are designing. So this is your way of kind of getting back in and
mm,
staying at the forefront of what's happening. So we offer the second pathway, and it's a more advanced pathway, and it's called leveling up. And that's essentially what it is. You're coming to us and you're learning how to level up your skills,
mm,
and so we offer classes in visualization. We offer a manufacturing class. We offer a business class. We offer an advanced sketching course, a portfolio course, and it's very catered for those who are like, you know, um, for students and for anyone who wants to level up their skills, but also perhaps it's also catered for people who might feel like uni probably didn't teach them
mm.
the right courses, or maybe there's some gaps that they need to fill. So then we offer these courses.
Yeah, I feel
And
like
in
I feel like that to some degree. Like I graduated end of last year and yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm prepared in some ways, but underprepared in other ways. Our university style in Australia is probably even very different to what it is overseas.
mm,
But like, what would you say to someone in my position? Like, I've just spent all that money on my degree. How can you justify, putting more money into into getting out there? Like, do you think it's wait, what would you say to someone in my position, basically?
yeah, I mean, you know, now that you graduated from university, you have this experience in, okay, I just did 4 years
Mm,
of university. I think what happens when you're in university, a lot of students when you're in high school, you're told you need to go to high school,
Mm,
and then when you go to university, there's an assumption, and parents are usually going to encourage you to go to college or go to university.
mm,
I think a lot of students don't have that self-awareness of why am I going to university? And they just go.
mm,
And yeah, sure, they major in engineering and business and design or whatever. But the end goal is that you go to university, and after those 4 years, the end goal is that you need to get a job after these
mm,
4 years. And a lot of students don't really see it that way because society and I think life, when you graduate high school, you're like 18 years old, and
mm,
then you're thrown into uni, and you're just too young to really understand, like, why am I going to uni?
mm,
And so in retrospect, looking at my own education, I wish I could have taken a break after high school and
mm,
maybe 2 years or something, maybe 2 or 3 year break, go work, do retail, maybe work in a bunch of different jobs, just so that I
mm.
can get experience
Yeah,
of
I took a year
what
off
it's
after school and went to UK, and honestly, I think it was the best thing I ever did.
awesome. Yeah, like get experience on traveling, get experience on being an adult, get an
Mm,
experience on just learning how to, just how to budget, a bank account, stuff like that. I mean, a lot of students just keep going to school and they really don't understand that after 4 years at uni, you have to get a job. And then design, you have to put together a portfolio. And there is some type of end game, and a lot of students don't understand that. And students accrue, they end up leaving uni with no jobs, or they end up leaving, with student loans,
mm,
which is very common here in the States. And so students go to school sometimes with no purpose, or they don't have a goal that they're trying to achieve.
mm,
Just because we're all young and we all kind of want to have fun, you go to school, you're making a lot of friends, you're partying, etc. Um, but then that happens and it hits you, and you're like, oh shit, like looking back, I wish I could have done X, Y, and Z. I wish I could have maybe um hunkered down and really, like, work towards a goal,
mm,
or whatever the case may be. And so my advice for you would be like, okay, now that you have this experience going through university, um, you know, you need to look at opportunities and see them as investments, right?
mm,
Um, and usually in a situation like this, I will sit down just like we're doing right now, and I would
mm,
probably talk to you one on one, and I would love to know about, hey, what does your work look like?
mm,
What are your experiences? Where would you like to work? For what
mm,
companies? What part of industrial design are you interested in? So essentially, I want to learn more about the student and their circumstance, and then I propose ideas on how we can help you.
mm,
Because essentially, Offsite is here as supplemental education. It is an investment in your own education. Nothing is guaranteed, just like nothing is guaranteed when you go to uni. Like they
mhm.
don't guarantee you a job. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that by coming to Offsite, you get closer to your goal, because we then connect you with mentorship, we connect you with industry.
Mm,
Our whole program is student centered, which means that any concern or any ideas that you might have, we listen to them and we
mm,
implement it in the program. So we actually use our students, um, to help us make our program better. So
mm,
at uni, huge campus buildings, like huge. Imagine if you have a problem with your tuition. Imagine if you have a problem with, I don't like this instructor and how they're teaching, or maybe I'm not getting the best. Who are you going to complain to? The
mm,
provost? Like, it's really hard. Like, as a paying student, you really don't have a voice, and that's
mm.
unfortunate.
I think
Education.
universities like ultimately end up like as a business, like more than an
Yes.
educational system. Like
Yeah.
unfortunately, like I think in back in the day it was a lot more education centric, but now
Mhm.
it's very much become a business and like they're trying to, make money at like, as the first thing. Because I specifically with my uni, we put like over COVID, for example, we put kind of like the needs of exchange students first before the needs of domestic students because of the money they were paying. And like
Yeah.
for example, like we had a lot of problems in like group activities because they just weren't really doing anything because they were in China and places like that. But like we just kind of had to deal with it because that's just kind of the situation they're in. Like they're paying like crazy amounts of money to go to this uni. So
Yeah,
the uni's basically just like suck it up, like we're getting paid.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
like
this the
yeah.
education system, the education system has become so big
Mm,
that they've the gap between the student and the school is so big. So you're absolutely right. It's the same problem here in the States that students or schools can charge so much money for international students,
mm,
and those students will those students will pay for it,
mm,
and the school sees that as a dollar sign,
yeah.
and you're just like, okay, well, so when we started Offsite, we just wanted to clean slate. Let's talk about giving everyone a level playing field. Let's give everyone the same opportunities.
Mm,
Let's make sure that our program is really tied to industry. So we're always talking to designers from industry, companies, studios, and they can tell us, they can kind of feed us, hey, this is how we're designing, this is what's trending, so that you can prepare your students.
mm.
So yeah, like I mentioned, there are no guarantees. We don't, once you leave our program, we're not like, okay, there's a job waiting for you. But I can tell you that we have accelerated that process a lot faster than a university, just because we're very well connected with industry.
Mm,
Um, Actually, a lot of our industry partners come to us and they're like, hey, we're looking for X, Y, and Z interns. I know you guys have a big body of students. Who can you suggest? So
mm,
for us, that makes our life easier
mm,
because job hunting is very stressful. It's a whole job in itself. So we've definitely made some really big strides in trying to make the life of the student a lot easier, at a fraction of the cost of what uni would cost.
yeah.
And you come to us for 12 weeks, you're in the class. After the 12 weeks, you still are part of our community. If you
Mm,
have any questions, if you want to meet with me, if you want to meet with your instructors, because you become an alumni after you leave for
mm,
12, after you stop taking the courses, but you never leave. We never ask you to leave the
mm,
community. You have access to all the, like right now we have uh, um, designer series where we invite designers from industry weekly. All that stuff is free to the
mm.
student at no cost. So you get this all for lifetime because we understand how valuable it is to be part of our program and our vision. So that's
I
kind
think
of
the community building aspect's really great as well because that's something that I feel like a lot of industrial design is kind of lacking because I feel like there's this quite a competitive aspect in industrial design, and I feel like sometimes people are a bit defensive about wanting to bring others in on the way they do things and things like that, and just like, but I feel like we're all in the same kind of mission here, and I think like that kind of needs to be removed. That's kind of why I started the podcast, to try and create more of a community like in on the Brisbane area. But no, I think it's great what you're doing. Mm,
awesome. Yeah, it's so important. Like you mentioned, community is we need it as humans. We need to be connected. Honestly, sometimes you don't even need to be talking about industrial design.
mm.
You can
Yeah,
just
in anything.
you can just be in the same room and just enjoy each other's company. So
Mm,
yeah, it is
exactly.
part of our DNA. Yep.
Yeah. Um, what are some key topics you discuss in Offsite? And how do they relate to real world industrial design projects?
Yeah, so all of our instructors are industrial designers. They're all working industrial designers.
I had Michael on. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You had one of our instructors, Michael DiTullo. Yeah, and they're all, I would say, the best in what they're doing, right?
Mm,
So I'm very excited that they're a part of what we do. So, the way that they teach, everything that they teach is all tied to real world industry, real world experience. Um, and so everything that they're teaching, you are being prepared for, hey, this is how it's done in industry, and this is how we do it as professionals.
mm,
So we don't teach them, I know that at uni and at institutions, sometimes there's a lot of theory happening and you're learning a lot of stuff like that, which is totally fine. But you need to balance it out. And then for us, we feel that the real world experience should be about 80%, and
Mm.
any other type of theory should be the leftover
Yeah.
20% or whatever. So we are very like, anything that's happening in industry, we want to make sure that our students are learning in that manner. So it's very important to us. Like, it just doesn't make sense for you to have a portfolio, um, and it doesn't, doesn't reflect what industry is doing. Um, and we also know that by students really getting this experience, when you're in an interview, you then have more confidence. You are 100% sure that what you're saying is true, right? You're not making it up on the spot.
Yeah.
Students can have a conversation about, hey, this is how this is made, and this is how I would do this, and this is kind of my thought process. And it comes from something real. It's justified.
Mm.
So yeah, everything that we do is very, very heavily on industry. And when we were looking to invite instructors to come on board, um, we I think that began a long time ago. It probably began when I graduated from school, and I started to plant seeds, and I started to network with people. Like, I met Spencer in 2010. I met Michael probably around the same time in 2008. I was a student when I met Michael.
Mm.
And then throughout the years, those relationships just, we went from being strangers to me admiring their work to, communicating on Instagram, to then becoming colleagues, to then becoming really good friends.
Mm.
And throughout those years, I was like, man, these people are amazing. They have a big influence in my life. And then when Offsite started, I had zero doubt. I'm like, I know who I'm going to invite to be an instructor, because, you know, um, it's there's there's um there's designers who can design very well,
Mm.
but they can't teach. Like,
Mm.
they're not really good teachers, and that's really hard to do. There's
Mm.
really good teachers, and sometimes those teachers can't design for shit either. So
I think that's
it's
the
a
problem with uni. You get one or the other. Like you get people who are
yeah,
like academics, and then you get people who are like industry people. But you very rarely get people who kind of have both aspects. Like one of my teachers,
yeah,
Raphael, he was on the podcast, and he is 100% what I'm talking about. Like he's got both aspects going on. Like he's a great educator, and he works in industry. But I feel like
perfect.
that's relatively rare in an educational setting.
It is really hard. I don't know why that you know combination is so rare. But the people that we're working on at Offsite, they somehow have that DNA. They
Mm.
just they're really good. They're designing, and then they're really good at them taking that information and then sharing it to others. And
Mm.
you know, I feel really lucky, because it's really like you have to vet a bunch of people to get to the right person.
Yeah.
And not only that, you have to also make sure that the person lines up with what your vision and what like be selfless, because we're doing this for students. And we've gotten a lot of people who want to work with us, all for the wrong reasons. So
Mm.
we tend to like, no, like, thank you but no thanks. But yeah, we're very lucky to have people like Michael and Spencer and Kelly and Kat and all these other amazing people who just are so natural educators. And again, it's a very rare DNA to have. So yeah, it is so important to us that you're tied to industry, and that you can then have that empathy that
Mm.
that is required to be a good educator. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. In terms of interactive learning, obviously it's quite a barrier with the way the world is, and your course is, entirely online. How do you leverage these issues, and do you bring in like technology to try and fix this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing this for 3 years. I feel like we've been trying everything, every
Mm.
option. Sometimes it fails, sometimes it works. And the whole goal for us is try everything, prototype everything, experiment, as much as you can. And we know that, especially industrial design, because I'm a professor of industrial design, and I teach here in Chicago in person,
Yeah.
and I know how valuable that in-person interaction and being there is. I mean, you can't replace that.
Mm.
You can never ever replace in person. But when we launched the online version, we were very calculated on how we were going to do that. We, you know, um, certain classes you can definitely do online for
Mm,
sure. Um, I remember we even had a prototyping class online, and that sounds insane. Like you're
mm,
like, how did you even do that? And I actually had Spencer do that. Um, and we did it to the best of our ability,
mm.
and that's the best you can do. And you know, Spencer did amazing. He had tutorials, he had demos, and he showed students how to prototype from home, from the comfort of your home, with like found objects, you know, like cardboard and stuff like that. And we had students from all around the world who might not have access like we do to like local stores where you can go buy hot glue and stuff like that. Like some people just don't have those stores, right? It just
Yeah.
depends on where you live. And so we Spencer taught that class to the best of his ability, and to his credit, it was pretty amazing, the content that he put together.
Mm.
But at the end of that class, we got together and we're like, this is just not practical, just
Yeah.
because you know, this type of class needs to be done in person, and you can't take that away from it, the you know, the in-person experience. So you're absolutely right. We've tried everything, and
Yeah.
we want to keep trying, and that's the whole point. Is, hey, is this going to work? Then let's reflect, how can we make it better? Or maybe this is something that we replace with another class that might be even more valuable.
Mm.
um
I suppose I kind of had a similar experience because I went through uni over COVID and I had like 1 year either side in person, which was a bit weird. And
mm,
I feel like those kind of challenges also came up. Like I had limited prototyping classes because like you can do it at home, but it's not the same really, and it's very hard
yeah.
to teach that as well. Um, but yeah, I suppose you just got to work with what you got. Yeah,
It's also very hard to just be motivated and be like,
yeah,
okay, I'm gonna make a prototype, right? Because at home, it's just different. At school, you have, you know,
your
studio
workshop.
environments. You
Mm,
have you have the culture of being in the studio. So for sure. So we definitely try everything. And you know, we tend to, like I said, it just keeps evolving. Like, okay,
mm.
this is working, this is not working, and we have those conversations all the time. So um,
Do you think
it
VR will
is.
come in the future? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so we definitely started looking into that, right? Because that's also something that we believe
Mm,
is a tool that our students can benefit from. Literally any tool that is happening. So, for example, like AI, all that stuff is
mm,
happening right now. We are looking into it and saying, okay, how does this fit in this curriculum, and how can we teach the students? Do we need to bring people from the outside to teach this?
mm,
Um, and so just making sure that these tools are offered to our students, so that whether we personally agree or
mm,
disagree, it is not our job to push that influence onto our students. Our job is to give those options to our students, and then the students can determine if this is good for them or not. So
mm,
yeah, so we're constantly having those conversations. As we speak, we're having a conversation right now internally about AI, and the
mm.
different tools that are offered, and how we can then plug those into our program. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I feel like you guys have is like an advantage over universities is you're a lot more versatile. Like because you're a smaller group, you can kind of make changes as the technology comes about and the environment changes. Whereas with university, I feel like there's a lot more legislative things they have to go through to get it to actually into the curriculum. Like I didn't get taught
Yeah.
anything about like we started getting VR coming at the end of my degree. But like in the beginning it was very, very, very like it wasn't really a thing at all. And it was only when it like really became mainstream it was adopted. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Yep.
just talking about uh in terms of like job readiness, how do you see offsite students are prepared for the real world and like what opportunities have you noticed that your students have been getting? Like do you have any examples you can give? For example, like the students that got the job they wanted kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so in offsites, there's different ways that we offer that kind of support. First of all, in core number two, we offer a mentorship program, which is a pretty big program. We have industrial designers from mostly from the US and mostly from Europe, who volunteer their time to be mentors, and they're working designers.
Mm,
And without their mentorship, without their participation, um, Offset would just be different. And I believe that, if you're a student, um, the school can't be the only source of education. And
mm,
that right there is it's a very hard pill to swallow, because we go to uni, we paid a lot of money, and then we're like, okay, well, they know everything and I'm going to be okay, right?
yep.
And I think as a student, you have to trust that. And maybe that was true at some point,
Mm,
right? But I think that, like you mentioned, uni is just so big that there's just so many levels of legislation that
mm,
things happen a lot slower, right?
mm,
And so, because we're a small team, we're very fluid. We're able to really pivot and shift and work really fast. So, um, we believe that yes, we are giving you an education, but we're also going to surround you with other sources of education that are going to help you understand the world. They're going to help you prepare for a job. They're going to help you, prepare for so many things. And mentorship is so, so powerful for us. And so our students get paired up with one-on-one mentorship from someone from industry. And so, for example, we would send you a survey and you fill it out. And in that survey, you tell us what you're interested, where you want to work, what are the skills that you need help with. And
mm,
then we send a survey to our mentors and they fill it out, and then we play matchmaker. So we
mm,
actually connect you with someone. If you want to go into consumer electronics, we're going to connect you with someone who's in consumer electronics.
mm,
And so this person can kind of help you get mold, they'll mentor you, they'll help you, so that's one aspect. The other aspect is our program also has a portfolio class that is taught by Kat Reiser. And she's amazing at teaching this course. And that portfolio class is extremely crucial because we look at portfolios and yes, we do look at your work and how it's
mm,
laid out and the narrative behind it, but we also help you identify your brand, your identity. Who
mm,
am I? And when I mean brand or identity, I don't mean like we help you make a logo for yourself. That's
mm,
not what we do.
mm,
What we do is we help you understand who you are and how that is visually shown in your portfolio,
mm,
right? Does your portfolio have an energy? Does it have a vibe? Does it have a life? And does this document represent you, right?
mm,
So then we help students make sure that their portfolio is super polished and it's visually intriguing and it has all the right components and it's also catered towards the company that you're trying to apply for. Um, because there's no such thing as a universal portfolio that's going to be applicable to every company you apply
mm,
for. So you have to kind of, edit that. Um, so there's a lot of components in order for us to ensure that a student is going to get the best chances of getting employed. There's a lot of things that go into that. Number one, it's that mentorship. Number two, it's that portfolio class. Number three, it's offsite offering all these resources of networking. And then number four falls on the student, right? How
mm,
much do you want it? What do you want to do? Do you have a plan in place? What's your strategy, right? Because you can go online and just start applying randomly, but if you don't really have a strategy,
mm,
you're kind of spinning your wheels, right? Because if you want to work at Microsoft, yes, you can go online and apply for a job, but it's probably going to take you longer. Hey, maybe we know someone at Microsoft, maybe someone
mm,
in our mentorship program knows someone at Microsoft. So now we start making connections, we start introducing you, and now we get you closer to your
mm.
goal,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's
So it
easy to
does
get
become
stuck in that trap of just like applying on, well, I don't know what it's called in the US, but we have Seek in Australia. Do you have Seek in the US? Probably. It's like,
no, we have something else, but yeah, I
yeah,
know
but
what
just
you
like,
mean.
oh, it comes up just applying on it. But like realistically, are you ever going to get a job doing that? Like, you gotta think a bit more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a job
Especially in
is
our
not a
field, it's so
button.
competitive. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, applying for a job is more than hitting a button online,
Mm,
right? Like that's
exactly.
not going to get you very far. What's going to get you far is these intimate relationships that are going to
Mm,
help you push you into the next level of networking. And that's how you're going to get noticed. So yeah, so we've had a lot of students who have been employed in the last 3 years. When we first started, our goal was, hey, let's offer the best education we can offer. Year number two, hey, let's make sure that our students are, really benefiting from this. Let's make sure they get internships, right? So every year we feel like we push ourselves, and this is year number three, and we feel that all the work that we have done is finally paying off because we're
Mm.
starting to see students um get employment. We're starting to see them um get internships, etc. But um I can pull up here a list of places. So we've had students that have been hired at Whirlpool, Miller Knoll, Fisker, Logitech, Bosch, Pentagram,
Mm.
Morama, Shark Ninja, Smart Design, Neo Brands, Box Clever. So we've had students, Lululemon, we've had students get employed across so many
That's
different
good.
companies, so many different corporations, studios, and it varies. Some of them have have gotten employed. They got their first internship, or they got their first job, or they got promoted. It just really depends on what you are trying to accomplish, and also
Mm.
depends what your circumstance. We have industrial designers who are already employed, and they're chasing a promotion, or they want to move to another team, or so we then work with them. Okay, this is kind of how you negotiate things. This is how you
Mm.
should think about salary, etc. So it just really depends on the circumstance, but we can probably say that our students are definitely getting those jobs. And one particular story that really sticks out is we've had the student in our first cohort. Um, he applied on a whim. He was
Mm.
like, I'm gonna apply, and if I get in, that's great. And if I don't, then I'm going to shift over to UX. So this student,
Sounds like me.
this student was ready to move over to UX, which is totally fine. Like to
Yeah.
each their own. That's awesome. UX is our friend. He was ready to move to UX because he just could not find employment in industrial design. He had just graduated. He was frustrated. Things were going on. And he was like, I'm going to apply to Offsite, and this is my last resort.
Mm.
And we had just started the program. So we were just as new as he was. And um, and not only did he apply to Offsite, he applied to our scholarship program. So we
Mm.
offer scholarships. And so his application came in, and he wrote this really long, like when you apply to Offsite, we ask you to provide really short answers on, hey, who are you? Why do you want to come here? But this guy wrote like a thesis,
Yeah.
and 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 the people, like, I was like, I need to read this, and I was reading it, and it like I was reading it, and I was like, it was breaking my heart. I was like, oh
Heavy,
my
yeah.
God, this dude is this dude's in pain,
Mm.
like he's very like, he's just very frustrated, and it reminded me of me when I was a
Mm.
student, right? Um, so I told my team, let's get this guy in here, and let's give him a full scholarship, and let's show him that everything that he has worked for in uni will pay off. Let's
Mm.
at least give him this one last chance. And so we did that, and this student excelled, and he was super excited, and it just like we just saw a new life in this kid.
Mm.
He left, offsite, and obviously he was still part of our community, and he still participates. And then a couple months later, he reached out to offsite and told us, "Hey guys, I just got hired at Lululemon as an industrial designer in the equipment team." And we were like, at that point, I was like, "All right, cool. Let's
It must
let's
be very
end."
fulfilling as an educator to be able to like connect with the students because I feel like a lot of educators they have no idea what happens after. But you have that relationship, so you're able to see the work that you're doing paying off. It's great. Mm.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, you know, if offsite doesn't like, let's say if offsite shuts its doors for whatever reason in the next year, this moment here
Mm.
was so worth it.
Worth it.
Uh, and it was pretty awesome, and it was really good. And what made me realize is that it took a bunch of people for that to happen. It didn't just take me. It took a bunch of people. It was a very complex puzzle, and that's usually how it works.
Mm,
There's a lot of people involved, and that's why when we invite designers to come on to be educators, we need to make sure that you are a team player,
mm.
right?
Yeah,
So that right there, that story was just amazing, and
mm,
um Josh, his name is Josh. He's doing amazing stuff. So
that's great.
yeah.
Uh, how do you ensure the students are able to receive personalized attention and support in online classes, opposed to just being kind of there? And I feel like with COVID, a lot of people just kind of were there or weren't even there and just had their cameras on and weren't really engaged. Yeah. How do you ensure
Yeah,
that doesn't happen?
story of my life for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Offsite was built from the ground up, like I had mentioned. It was very student centered. So we definitely make sure that all of our students have a voice. Um, we can only do we can only control what we can control.
Mm,
And being a part of Offsite is definitely a two-way street. And
mm,
when we have our orientation, we are very transparent with the students. We tell them what our expectation is and what they should expect from us. We're going to come at you with a lot of stuff. It's very high level. We're excited for you to be here. But if the student doesn't meet that, then that's on the student,
mm,
unfortunately. And yeah, it's very common. I
mm,
totally like it is very common. It's very hard because we have students that are working, right?
mm,
So we have some students that have families, and some of them might not be attending the live courses. They watch the pre-recordings or the recordings after, and they still try to keep up. But every student has a very individual situation that they're dealing with, and we just try to do our best to support. Our communication hub is Slack,
mm,
um, so that our students, like I get DMs probably once or twice a week from students asking me, hey, this week I had to work like 50 hours or whatever, and I just want to let you know. And so I get a lot of direct messages, and my
mm,
job is to just listen and support and provide them,
mm.
with the best that I
Whatever they
can.
need. Mm,
And I'm accessible in that way. Like students do have, like they do for me, like I am make want to make sure that our students have all the resources. But this equation requires two parts, right? It
mm,
requires us, and it requires them, right? And that's what's going to give you the best kind of result. And sometimes it doesn't pan out that way.
mm,
Like an example is we've had students where life happens, like during COVID, in different parts of the world, COVID was worse than in other parts. So while here in the States, things were pretty good, things in other parts of the world might have been even like in a very critical situation, and some students there, it hit home where
mm,
people around them passed away and things like that. And so we've had students who had to come to me and to us and say, hey, I cannot focus. I know that I invested, and maybe the first 2 weeks they were like very committed,
mm,
and then something happened, and we're not going to ask them, but they're just like, I can't do this right now. Can I postpone my participation for the next cohort? And we're like, yeah, of course.
mm.
So then the next cohort rolls around and they're part of that, and if they're ready. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that happen. There's a lot of variables. But at the end of the day, if you remove all those variables, even in just traditional uni, you still need this two-way
Mm.
equation, right? It's
It's about
the
your own
school.
commitment as well. You can't be, I think a lot of people expect they're going to go to uni and the teacher's going to engage them so much that they just can't even look away. But like you have to have
Yeah.
that passion inside so that you can follow that journey. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially at offsite, like you're
Mm,
coming to us, right? Like we didn't go to your high school and
mm,
pulled you out of your seat,
yeah,
right? So you're voluntarily coming to us. And
mm,
so you need to then commit, and it happens, like I totally understand, and you're absolutely right. We do have students who have their cameras off, and et cetera. And so our we tend to encourage our students, hey, when you can have your cameras off, but when you're speaking, when you have a question, turn it on,
Mm,
things like that. I know some students might be learning in a very they might be in a room with other people, etc. And we totally understand. So we're just very transparent and very open,
mm.
and we expect the same from our students. So yeah.
That's good. Um, do you, well, you already kind of answered that. As collaboration and teamwork is very important in industrial design, how do you kind of establish that within offsite?
How do we establish teamwork?
Yeah, like working together as a team, collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah, so some classes, it really depends. So some courses that we offer are very team-based. Some of them require you to work with other people, get feedback, things like that. We also rely a lot on some applications that we use for that teamwork, right? So some of the courses might be using Figma, and
Mm,
that really helps with, online collaboration. I know some other in the beginning we were using Miro, and so again, it's very similar to Figma,
mm,
and things like that. So we do offer, depending on the course. So for example, the manufacturing course is probably not going to have any type of team activities because that course is more lecture based, right? So
mm,
you're learning about manufacturing methods, etc. Maybe the sketching course, the methodology course, is when you're able to then work with other people. You're able to
mm,
then understand their workflow, and you do it through breakout rooms. You do it on your own. We have like outside of the class, we have a studio channel where people just jump in into this channel, and they can work either together or they can work by themselves, and people are just there,
mm,
like there's just a presence. Yeah, so we supplement that with Figma and other tools. It's very similar to your question with like how do you offer, very similar to like the prototyping class. Like
mm,
it's something that obviously you can never ever replace in an
mm,
in-person, teamwork. um but we feel that we make up for it because you're working with students. Like right now you're, it's like, 1 a.m. where you're at, and it's 10 a.m. where I'm at, but we're together on this
mm.
channel, and that is freaking awesome. That
Yeah.
perhaps I get to learn from you, and you get to learn from me, and we both come from different cultures,
Mm,
and so we feel that we make it up because you're on this channel with people from around the world who can give you perspective on design.
mm,
um, and that is, I mean, you can't replace that. So
mm.
it's hard. It's not easy, but I think that's why we do it, because it's not
Mm.
easy. Like, this is
Yeah.
a challenge. We want to see how we can approach it. And like everything else, let's try to find a solution for it. So we're constantly looking for new ways of doing it. The cool part is, every year, our team has a conference. It's called Square One. And a really cool part about that is that, we had our conference in the fall, and we had over 100 offsite students migrate
Mm,
physically to one location. And that was really cool because for the first time ever, they all got to meet each other in person, like
mm,
no more camera. And it just shows how students are very committed to, like,
mm,
again, in person, you can never replace that. So
mm.
we're always trying to find new ways for sure.
I do think this kind of style of education definitely is evolving into like more common in the future. Like even have you heard of Jordan Peterson's course he's creating at the moment on psychology? Like he's doing like a $4,000 online psychology and he's trying to get it like accredited as a university degree. Just trying to make like basically what we're doing, trying to make education affordable and also just more effective.
Yeah, that's
Um,
pretty amazing. Yeah.
and yeah, I feel like this kind of thing, like maybe this will be the future. Like it'll move away from the traditional theme of education into this kind of platform. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
I
exciting.
I do believe that if the schools right now, if traditional unis are not doing something to
Mm,
shake things up,
mm,
by the time maybe in 10 years where things are a little more, where students start to realize, hey, maybe I don't have to go to uni, maybe I could
mm.
just do online, it'll be too late for them to change. So
Yeah.
unis right now, if you're listening, you need to start implementing some changes, because
Mm,
COVID and a bunch of, like, Generation Z and millennials, I think people are fed up with
Mm.
tradition,
Yeah.
you know? So
I
you got to
really
do,
it was an eye opener when I graduated and they came out in the robes with the big metal staff. I was like, wow, this is really old school.
yeah.
Yeah, so no, I think like even I first heard about you from this guy called Neil Davidson. Do you know him? He's a Australian, he owns Australian industrial design consultancy. But you see, you just I suppose the words got out. But yeah, he basically said like he looks for designers who have your qualifications because like it makes them stand out against other people. And like it's not
Awesome.
even an accredited university degree, but like does that piece of paper even matter if you're not even, like going above someone who has a degree like yours, like that just shows it's really got something different. So yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, in what challenges do you see in the future for on-site, and how are you going to work towards solving them?
Or like on-site education.
Just yeah, on-site education, and maybe even industrial design in general, because I feel like you're quite integrated into the community.
Yeah. I mean, there's always, just, I think, you know, just the connection to industry, not emphasizing manufacturing.
Mm,
So there's just a lot of things that schools are just not teaching. Also, it's very difficult for unis to, something new is happening. They
mm,
can't just propose a class. And unis are very tied to,
mm.
especially public universities, they're very tied to the government.
Yeah.
So if there is budget cuts, the schools have to, cut back on things.
Mm,
And what are the programs that usually get cut back on? The art programs,
yeah.
right? So the future of these programs are in the hands of the wrong people. That's the
Mm,
problem,
exactly.
right? The decisions, it comes from, especially public ones. I don't know if I can say that about private institutions. It might be different. But honestly, what really needs to happen is educators need to really be students again. They
Mm,
need to go out and understand what's happening in the world and how they can bring that back into the classroom.
mm,
Um, and to give you an example, I do that all the time, right? Yes, I'm a working industrial designer. I'm an educator, but when I have a break from school, it can be like a spring break or a fall break or even a summer break. I go and travel. I
mm,
travel around the States. I go to New York. I might go to the San Francisco, mostly San Francisco, because right now, Silicon Valley, San
mm.
Francisco, that's the hub for innovation and design.
Yeah.
So my job is I go over there. I reach out to friends that work there. I go and I have conversations, I have coffee with them. I sit down, I pick their brain, and I'm
Mm,
like, what's going on? What are you guys working on? What can I learn? I become a sponge and I
mm,
bring that information back into my classroom so that my students can benefit from that.
mm,
So yeah, we're almost like, we become, we have this really big responsibility as educators to go out and find information and make sure we're at the forefront. Because if we're not, we're already behind, right?
yeah.
So I do that a lot with like, I just actually, like, last week, which is probably why I had pushed this podcast, a week later, is because I was in San Francisco and
Mm,
I was meeting with all these really big companies and smaller studios, and I was around people that were just so inspiring, and I'm like, oh my God, why aren't we doing this? And and you just never know. You're having a conversation. It can be someone random,
mm,
and they can say something that can just be like, oh my God, yeah.
mm,
And so, as an educator, yes, there's a lot of things on your plate. You got to be designing, you got to be teaching, but I think it's also very important that we are connected. We are the most connected people in the room so that we know what's happening, so that our students, because our students, we have a responsibility to our students, right? So we got to make sure that they get that education. And so that's one thing I think schools need to do that. Um, And let's see what else. Yeah, so I think, just industry and then making sure that the courses that are being offered in the first 2 years are super, super important. So one thing that I've noticed with different schools is that they don't know how to offer courses. Like timing is everything,
Mm,
right? The first year, right off the gate, you should be learning about manufacturing. You should be learning how to sketch. You should be learning how to CAD. Um,
mm,
there's some schools that don't teach you that until your third year or maybe later in your second year, and by that time, it's already too late, right? So manufacturing, CAD, sketching, um, even like graphic design 101,
mm,
that should be the backbone of an industrial design program,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because you can be a good designer if you don't know how things are made, right? I
Mm,
know a lot of students that design stuff. How's that going to be made? And then they don't know how to do it. And now they're working backwards because now they need to figure out, oh man, I got to figure this out. And
mm,
then eventually their design ends up changing because, it's just not plausible.
mm,
So it's about being efficient. It's about having a curriculum that is calculated and it makes sense.
mm,
Um, so that the student is going through your program in a very organic way.
mm.
So I see, yeah, a lot of programs are not set up in that way, and the classes are just scattered. There's kind of no structure.
I
Some
think
schools are,
they provide
yeah,
you a bit of like a false sense of security as well. Like you leave and you think, oh, I've got this certificate. I have the skills needed to get a job. But like
yeah,
the one thing like I've really found this podcast has taught me is like talking to all these people in all these different fields that I want to be in. I'm realizing I'm not up to standard, and it's been good because it's like, like for example, Neil was like, you need to learn more about manufacturing. So I'm like on LinkedIn learning more about manufacturing. It's like you need to be better at sketching. And it's like you take bits from here and there, but like unfortunately with education, I feel like they kind of give you like when you graduate, you have the emphasis that you are fine now, like you have everything you need to know. But I think like it's
yeah,
almost better to teach people that you always need to learn more. You always need to grow more. Like,
yeah.
you may have a certificate, but this doesn't really mean anything because there's much more learning to come. Yeah.
Well, Roman, there is a seat waiting for you at Offsite if you ever want to join us.
Maybe I will. Yeah. But no, that was great anyway, Hector. It was really great to talk to you. And I think a lot of people who graduated my year are kind of in a similar position to me. And I think that they'll really be interested in your course. And yeah, I hope that they reach out if they're interested. I will leave your details in the description. And yeah, if anyone's interested, please reach out. I had a great time talking to Hector, and I'm sure he'll be very excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm going to close this interview here by just saying one more thing. And the way that I look at life, or just in general as an educator, is people come into your life to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And so you have to choose wisely. And that
Mm,
applies to anything you do in industrial design or just in general as an inspiring designer. Think about who you get around with,
mm,
because people will change your trajectory and
mm.
people will change your life. So, Roman, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's a honor to be here. So appreciate it.
Thank you.